go back to our top story now. Good news for parents and pupils at both private and public schools. Government has announced that almost 600,000 teachers and support staff will be vaccinated. This is regardless of their age. So the drive will kick off on Wednesday, and teachers won't need to register, but just to require, they will require rather to have their ID to get the jab. Hopolang Selebalo, co-head of research and equal education, joins me now from Johannesburg to get the latest on this. Hopolang, I mean, we've heard what the Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, has had to say about the schools remaining open. What's your take on equal education regarding that decision?
Good evening, Faith, and thank you so much for inviting us on. We definitely celebrate the announcement by the Minister that school staff will be receiving their vaccinations from next week, Wednesday. And the Minister did communicate quite a clear plan on how the rollout is going to work. It was actually quite comprehensive. And in the midst of what we've seen around the vaccine rollouts, it's a relief that we saw something that detailed. Of course, the proof is in the pudding in terms of how it actually works on the ground and ensuring that teachers and school support staff are safe. But we are very happy that this is going ahead. And another factor that we welcome is what you had actually touched on a bit earlier around the risk-adjusted strategy and the fact that schools and provinces are encouraged to use a differentiated approach depending on the severity of infection in that particular area, as opposed to a blanket approach across the country. So basically, we are trying to communicate that our preference is definitely that learners are back in school full time, that teachers are safe, vaccinated, so that they can obviously teach and support learners, and that the opening and reclosing of school be context specific. Through the use of this risk-adjusted strategy. So good news in terms of what we heard today from the Minister.
Yeah. Are you confident that the department would indeed have vaccinated the 582,000 people in the sector within the next 2 weeks? And this is just in light of how our own vaccine rollout program has been initiated. Some analysts saying that we're up to 4 months delayed.
I mean, that's a good question, and we will have to see. As I said, it's all how it works out in practice. I would like to say that I don't want to say that there's skepticism, there's celebration. It's great news. There's been a lot of confusion recently about whether teachers would or would not be vaccinated, when, how old teachers would have to be, like under which age group they'd have to fall into. And what was communicated today was eased any worries and concerns that we had in terms of an actual plan. But we will have to see how that works out on the ground. And the implications of having teachers vaccinated back in the classroom are fantastic, because then we can deal with the learning losses that were a result of COVID-19, which has been our biggest concern. Is how much time learners have lost, and the fact that our members as Equal Education have communicated that they actually do want to be back in school, and that they've really been struggling when they are at home in terms of learning, in terms of access to school nutrition and psychosocial support. So this moment is quite a big one.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about the discrepancies as well as the inequalities that have been further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, do we actually understand just the ramifications of COVID-19 on already a fragile state of or system of education? Have we totally tallied exactly how these young people have been affected by COVID-19, but even how already an ailing school infrastructure program has been hardest hit simply because of the inequalities now that exist?
I mean, the learning backlogs are going to be quite severe. I think if the DBE has presented a number of times in Parliament on what the implications are in the long term of learners not having been in school, having lost so much time over the last year. But I do think that quite a critical example is what we saw during the matric results period, and just that downward trend in terms of the pass rate because of just so many disruptions. And we know that learners from particularly under-resourced schools are the hardest hit. History catching up with us in this moment. And obviously, like highlighting the issues that Equal Education has been speaking about for almost a decade and around the importance of school infrastructure. And the idea that closing schools, in fact, if anything, widens those inequalities because it is learners in those under-resourced schools that are going to struggle the most because we know that online teaching systems have been very, very difficult. Learners don't have network in some rural provinces. Teachers don't have access to devices, or schools in themselves don't have devices to communicate with learners with online. But we know that both the Quintile 5 Model C schools, they will continue with their learning. Private schools will continue with their learning if schools are shut down. So the hardest hits in the complete closure of schools are the learners that are attending under-resourced schools.
Hopolang, we'll leave it there for this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopolang Selebalo, co-head of research at Equal Education. While to